All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that note, we are ready to start the session 1 of the technical sessions of this 38th annual conference of the OPA. And it gives me great pleasure to call upon the dignitaries at the head table, the panelists, to take your respective seats. And we're going to start off with the session chair, where the first session is about unlocking Sri Lanka's potential, building a globally competitive economy. We have with us the session chair, Professor Ajantha Dharmasiri, Senior Professor in Management, former Director, PIM. Is a leading pragmatic in Sri Lanka with extensive industry experience and international academic exposure. Is a chartered manager as well as a chartered HR professional as well as chartered electrical engineer. He is also a noted conference speaker, corporate trainer, strategic consultant, and a scholarly author. He is a former director, chairman of the Postgraduate Institute of Management, University of Sri Jawatanapura, and he is also adjunct professor at the Price College of Business, University of Oklahoma. He is an independent director of the several boards and serves in governing councils. His 3 decades of private and public sector experience include consultancies for Unilever and Nestle. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Ajantha Dharmasiri. I would like to call upon the other panelists as well to the stage. First, we have the former Foreign Secretary of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, Mr. Ravinatha Aryasinha, will be talking to us on the leveraging Sri Lanka's strategic location. A retired member of the Sri Lanka Foreign Service, was the ambassador to the US, permanent representative to the UN in Geneva, and ambassador to Belgium, Luxembourg, and the European Union, the former executive director of the Lakshma Kadirgama Institute of International Relations and Strategic Studies, and serves on the board of the management of Gamini Korea Foundation, and holds a BA in Philosophy, Politics and Economics from the University of Verité and Masters in IR from the University of Colombo. Mr. Ravinatha Aryasinha. Then we have Senior Professor H.D.Karunaratne, the Chair Professor of Business Economics, former Vice Chancellor of University of Colombo, and former Chairman of IPS, who will be talking to us on creating a global educational and knowledge hub. Currently, the Chair Professor of the Business Economics from the Faculty of Management and Finance of University of Colombo, and during his 35 years of service at the University of Colombo, he has held many positions including VC, Chief Executive Officer, Director, Institute of HR Advancement, Dean of the Faculty of Management and Finance, Head of the Department of Commerce. He is the former Chairman of the Summit Finance PLC and Institute of Policy Studies. Ladies and gentlemen, Senior Professor H.D.Karunaratne. Then talking to us on enabling public-private partnerships for economic growth, we have with us Dr. Nishan Dimel, Executive Director of Verité Research, is the Executive Director and the Head of Research. He is an economist with extensive academic policy and private sector experience who has served on several presidential and national steering committees. He is also the former Executive Director of the International Center for Ethics Studies, among others. Internationally, Nishan has held several governing, teaching and research positions, including as a lecturer in economics at the University of Oxford. His undergraduate degree in economics is from Harvard University, and he earned his master's and doctoral degrees in economics from the University of Oxford. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Nishan Dimel. As I hand over the proceedings to our session chair, I would like to remind all the panelists and the session chair, we have the timer right in front of you. Each presenter, they have 40 minutes for the presentation, and followed by the Q&A at the end of all 3 presentations for 20 minutes. Over to you, Session Chair.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for that response that shows that we are still biologically awake and alert. So it gives me immense pleasure to be the first chairperson of this annual conference, and my life has been made easier in making me the chairman, so I don't have to talk, I have to rely on others speaking. So I have three veterans around me to share their valuable insights with regard to unlocking Sri Lanka's potential towards a thriving global economy. If you recall, of course, we have short memories as Sri Lankans, but I think as professionals, we should have long memories. So I remember we had COVID, and we had post-COVID crisis, long fuel queues, and long power outages, long gas shortages, and then it is a classic case study ending as a chase study. So that is the era that we have gone through, and now I hope economy is on track, and I earnestly hope and pray that it will not be derailed, and we all have to ensure that the country thrives. So in that perspective, we have three veterans to share three different viewpoints in looking at the Sri Lankan potential from three different angles. I would call it the location perspective, bring the geopolitical realities into the scene, and then the learning perspective, where the education is a vital ingredient for the economic recovery. Sometimes I might feel as someone in the education with my respected sir, Professor Karunaratne, are we overlooking education in overemphasizing economy? They go hand in hand. So education, the learning perspective, and of course, how can we forget private-public partnership, the leveraging perspective. So the location, learning, and leverage. So to begin with, may I invite my good friend, Mr. Ravinatha, Aryasinha. I have seen him in media a lot, first as a news reader at Rupavahini, and now he is a news maker more than a news reader. He has come a long way in keeping Sri Lankan flag high in the global scene, in adding a lot of value in the foreign service. So without further ado, may I invite Mr. Ravinatha Aryasinha to make his presentation. I will give a slight indication if you are running out of time, and don't think it's a disturbance, it's my duty. Shall we give him a big round of applause?
Thank you very much for your kind words, and members of the panel, the chair and the office bearers of the OPA, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of COVID, it reminded me that the last time I addressed the OPA was during COVID when I was Foreign Secretary, and that day, the time we were talking was very different from the times today. We were really not quite sure what the next day was going to look like, and it was a virus. Today, we come to talk about situations which kind of actually we can do something a little more about. Now, when I was asked to talk about leveraging Sri Lanka's strategic location, I thought I'll look at it in the context of three things. One, the challenge. Two, the misnomers we have about it. And third, what the remedies might be. I'm not going to spend too much time on the location aspect, because all of us from the time we've been little have been told it's the Muthu affair and all that. And its strategic value, location, and all that is well known. However, this very locational advantage has been severely misused and abused in the past, to the extent that location has sometimes been sadly seen as a liability. Now, however, the challenge, therefore, is how we increase the exploitation of our positional advantage. Now, there are sets of challenges which have put us into this difficult situation. Pre-2009, we could have talked about the terrorist problem. Post 2009, we can find excuses in Easter Sunday, COVID, the economic crisis, and now the recovery. But however, I think what is important to understand is that the root causes of our difficulties of making this Muthuata shine and blossom and thrive is more systemic and functional problems which for 76, 77 years we've been trying to grapple with and have not succeeded in. And first of all, we must all tap ourselves and ask, what were we doing? Because we've lived through these times. Not to apportion blame, but to learn the lessons of not making the mistakes we made in the past. Now, there are two sets of factors which has contributed to this, the challenges I mean. One set is the internal factors over which we have more control of. And when I looked at the schedule, Mr. Chairman, I see that many of those areas are going to be looked at sectorally. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but to say that it is all interconnected with the other things. You can't look at the leveraging location and the region and the world without connecting it to all the dots which are there. What I instead want to try to look at is the factors which are external to Sri Lanka, largely resulting from overseas dynamics, but also the responses to them by Sri Lanka's administrations. Now, when we look at the world, we see that in a region which our economic engagement, except probably with China and India, is minimal and cannot be reversed in a hurry. That's a reality which we have to think about and try to ask ourselves, what do we do? A second thing again which we have to think about very much, although right now this week I think we are having a breather because people are talking with each other in the world and, you know, there seems to be some kind of movement, is the contestation and the resulting polarization between major powers seeking to engage Sri Lanka, but to make it theirs alone, seeking what I might call exclusivity. So that is a very existential problem. Now, in order to guard against these challenges and regain the latitude, the onus will be on Sri Lanka to adapt and to change where necessary. Now, I want to focus on two misnomers which have come about in recent times. One relating to economics and the second relating to foreign policy and politics, which we need to kind of get clear in our mind. The first is that the failure to maximize benefits from economic engagement was a failure of marketing and economic diplomacy. Now, I sometimes take that a little offensively because whatever our periods serving, me in the foreign service, you in your professions, we work bloody hard. And what has happened in spite of all the efforts we made. And having served as a foreign service officer alongside my colleagues from trade, the main challenges we faced when abroad were much more complex. There were issues concerning corruption, governance failures resulting in a lack of predictability, the absence of consistent policy and regulatory frameworks, the inability to ensure a level playing field for all, poor diversification of our export baskets. I jokingly say that when I joined the Foreign Service in 1988, apparel was the number one export. I left in 2021, apparel was still by far the single most export. So, that says a story. And the ones who are coming up have not really picked up. So that says a story. Then also poor diversification of markets and for commodities and services and in drawing investment. Now here we are conscious that as much as we talk about look at the region, we must look at Southeast Asia, we must look at Asia. We have very little going in Asia. We can't suddenly change that. The reality is that within SAARC, intra-SAARC is about 5%, intra-BIMSTEC trade is about 6%, intra-IORA, because that includes the Middle Eastern countries, is about 10 to 15%, ASEAN is about 3%, RCEP and BRICS we talk about. RCEP we have applied for membership. BRICS we are also kind of asking, is nothing much to write home about. And if we had any doubt about how vulnerable we are, the last 3 months with the reciprocal tariffs, that has brought that to the fore. But my problem is not that. My problem is that even in this moment, we are still talking about we must diversify trade. We must diversify markets. There are plenty of studies which have been done on these. There is no need to reinvent the wheel, Mr. Chairman. All one needs to do is to have, in the old days, they would have called it a Sangayanava, and make some decisions and make sure you implement it. And in doing so, you also need to have all the relevant players on board. Now, we have done that in the past. This is not the first time we've had to do that. We've done that in fighting terrorism. We've found consensus on how, at some point. There have been differences of opinion, but we've found consensus. Even on the IMF package, there were differences, but we found consensus and we've steered clear. Why is it that on issues like what I'm talking about, where there are things that work and things that don't work, we have to wait to be pushed to do that by circumstances like the tariff. In one way, the tariffs, thankfully, have come and settled to a point where, as at 20%, we are abreast with our other competing countries. But you have to always be you're never sure how settled you are. The second aspect I want to talk about, the misnomer, is that this whole problem is because we have followed a non-aligned or neutral policy which denies Sri Lanka the leverage in the economic sphere, and that Sri Lanka must take a side in order to protect itself. Now, I am someone who has both not openly saying it, but within and since retirement been very strong with the view that resorting to such bandwagoning, with whomsoever it may be, whether India, China, US, does not matter, which is impractical, number one. Why? Can we do without the exports to US? Can we do without the support we have got from India from time to time on specific issues? What are we going to do tomorrow if the Human Rights Council comes after us? Don't we have to go to China to ask them to call for a vote? These are realities. So for those who say, no, the problem is trying to be friendly with everybody, we have to take a side, I say, if we took a side, we would be in the same position today a lot of countries are. Today, yes, we are having to juggle with the United States on trade. but it's on trade. It's not like we don't have any other place to go. We may be not so rich, we may not be so powerful, but at least we have steered clear from taking sides. Now this is after having swung like a pendulum from side to side over time. And had we not done that, particularly post-conflict, we might not be in this situation. So what I am saying is, first of all, we have to avoid getting back there. And we must understand that this strategic space which opened up the Aragale and the economic crisis might have been difficult, but at least it brought us back to the center in foreign policy terms. So far, we have managed to stay there. And I think what we need to offer all these countries concerned, who are competing for us, who want exclusivity in Sri Lanka, is to give them predictability in regional security. Not that we are going to enter into defense agreements with them, not that we are going to start giving one part of the country, the other part of the country, and a third another part of the country, but we are going to make this country acceptable and inviting to everybody and create a level playing field. And also importantly, this obsession of only dealing with the major powers must also gradually give way to engaging more with the middle powers, who have been there, but whom I don't think we spend enough time on. Because that is our insurance policy, and with the support of the global south, as India is showing today, that is where our future lies. It does not mean that we have to ignore the major powers, but it means that we have to ask ourselves, and we have a good history of that. We don't have to reinvent the wheel there. So I think with those words, I think that operationalizing these elements will require a domestic consensus on its own perspectives and interests and engage in careful negotiations with relative interlocutors. As the primary professional body in Sri Lanka, the Organization of Professional Associations and its membership could play a special role in helping in building this much-needed consensus, cutting across not only different professional groups, but also straddling the urban-rural, domestic, international reach through its membership. I commend that suggestion to your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aryasinha, for those insightful words which highlights the level playing location that Sri Lanka ought to be, and Sri Lanka has to be, and Sri Lanka should be. So with that, I'm sure there will be questions in your mind. We will take the questions once the three presenters share their thoughts at the end. Of course, Mr. Aryasinha has to go a little early. So after the three presentations, we'll take his questions first, and then we will release him, and then we have more time for the deliberation with the two other veterans. So may I now invite Senior Professor Karunaratne, whom I knew as a veteran Vice Chancellor, to share his perspectives of education angle, how to unlock Sri Lanka's potential. Shall we give him a big round of applause?
Very good morning to all. The President of OPA and the incoming President and all Executive Committee members, thank you very much for giving this opportunity to me. You can download my presentation if you scan this QR code. So you can go ahead, you can get the presentation. Okay, it is delighted to make this speech because by training I'm an economist. By experience, I think over 70% I'm an academic administrator. So all the university positions I have done in Sri Lanka, as well as I have learned in 4 universities in Japan, taught in 4 universities in Japan, during last 36 years. So therefore, my experience, I do want to share, but I may not go into much my trainee discipline called economics. Okay, the topic you have given to me is very clear. That is creating a knowledge, education and knowledge hub. So this is very important concept where we always think about, because Sri Lanka, if you compare with the East Asian countries, the relative resource what we have is the human potential. Still, we could not develop our human potentials in par with the East Asian countries. There are some issues with respect to South Asia as well. So therefore, creating an education and knowledge hub is not an easy task. Shall we go into second slide? Okay, what is education and knowledge hub? There is a definition, the standard definition, where that any area or country seeking the center for excellence in education, particularly teaching, training, and of course the professional development, which need more participation and contribution by the various institutes such as universities and of course not the students but also institutions. The institutional structure we have to understand very clearly if we are going to define the education hub. And when it comes to knowledge hub, you know that the ecosystem for knowledge creation and the knowledge usage and the knowledge used by the organizations and the particularly exporters. So innovations and entrepreneurship. And when it comes to the global education and knowledge hub, it is actually not a simple concept. I think it is kind of an ambitious objective, because country like Sri Lanka, we are still far behind the global level. Maybe you have different view, but in terms of quantitatively, we are behind. Because in 1960s and 70s, we were better. But if you compare, I'll show you later how this approach coming. And what are the key characteristics of education and global hub? What are the key characteristics of education and global hub? Number one, you see concentration on the education institutes. Education institutionals, we know that there are 5 types of education: primary, secondary, tertiary, higher education, and of course we have lifelong education. So accordingly, education institutes should be designed to create the hub in the particular country or the area, where that we know the development of the institutional structure has not happened in Sri Lanka. The institutional structure should change in terms of managing, in terms of designing. So that is a little bit lacking thing, but that's the number one important character of education and the knowledge hub. Number two, high quality education, where that you can see particularly wide range of academic programs and leading experts in the country, number of scientists, something like that. And of course, the various disciplines and advanced facilities. To what extent we are providing advanced facilities for learning in higher education when you are comparing with the East Asian countries or some South Asian countries. Then the number two is attraction of students and talents. So are we trying to get more foreign students? Because university means the universe. So we need more foreign students. I think in Singapore today they have more than 50,000 foreign students learning. And if you go to a country like Japan, more than 300,000 foreign students. And if you go to Australia or maybe USA, maybe more foreign students. And of course, attraction of talented students is essential. Number four, knowledge production and innovation. To what extent the knowledge product coming from the education and knowledge institutions. So that is important thing. And number 5, strategic government support. To what extent government strategizing next 5 years, next 10 years, how our education system should change, what are the new organizations should come, how we compare with the other partner countries. Number 6, networking and collaboration. To what extent we have networking? Each and every discipline, some countries, there are many networks working, wheels and wheels within the wheels. Country like Japan, entire system is going with the networking. So, of course, in that sense, the OPA is doing great job in networking with all the organization of professionals. So that is the essential thing. And of course, number 7, periodically evaluate economic impact of education. Are we always evaluating at least once a year or 3 years' time how much the educational institutes and the knowledge-creating institutes contributed to the GDP or contributed to the job creation, contributed to the macroeconomic other variables. And number 8, focus on emerging technologies and global challenges. So that is, of course, that should be done through the innovation and the research. Finally, cultural exchange and integration. So to what extent we are promoting that in the education system. So these 9 characteristics we have to have an education hub or the knowledge hub. Then I would like to take Singapore as a case where we know, I said that some countries like US, they have areas selected as the education hub or knowledge hub. But Singapore is entire country working as a knowledge hub or the education hub. The three main things there, you can why this Singapore consider as a education hub or the knowledge hub. Number 1, high quality education system. Number 2, significant investment in R&D. And number 3, supportive ecosystem for innovations and entrepreneurship. Then, of course, what can we gain from the world-class education system in Singapore? There are a couple of things we can gain. Number 1, meritocracy and rigor, particularly the teaching, mathematics, science, and languages. These 3 in Sri Lanka, we have to develop. The teaching methodologies, teaching techniques, teaching levels, and we need to give priority for more mathematics teaching, science teaching, and languages teaching. Actually, what we are trying to do that, we are trying to promote those who cannot learn mathematics or because of the failure of the trainer side, we are promoting without mathematics, you can go in higher level. Country like Japan, high school, mathematics is compulsory. There's no division like commerce, management, or arts or something like that. So those who have done mathematics in high school only can go to universities. That is the usual common thing because the country has a proper way to teach the mathematics, teach the science, and teach the languages, alternative languages. Number 2, bilingual education, mainly English and mother tongue. English and mother tongue, of course, there is a wrong understanding also in Sri Lanka because we are a multi-ethnic nation. The Sinhalese must learn Tamil or Tamils must learn Sinhala. I don't think that will work because if you see the Singapore, how they are not promoting the non-commercial languages. Mother tongues are, of course, we have to secure, but the English and mother tongue is the best way to economize and lean type of education management. If you try to teach English for Sinhalese, Sinhala for English, then other languages also, then you will stuck with only your mother tongue and English. But other countries, you see, the tragedy of the Sri Lankan education system, 300,000 sitting for advanced level examination. How many students sitting for English exam in advanced level? Only 1,800. Out of 300,000, out of 300,000, only 1,800 sitting for advanced level English as a subject. If you study other languages, Japanese may be 1,400, Chinese may be 1,400, not even 5,000, sitting for one single language out of the 300,000 in language in of course, higher education. So this is one of the crime where if you see that other countries, many people learn the alternative languages. Of course, holistic development and the international appeal. Since my time is limited, I will skip the next slide and I will move into the next one. As I explained, what is education? You and I received education up to 4. Now we are in the 5th stage, where the primary education, secondary education, tertiary education, okay. The misunderstanding in Sri Lanka is the higher education. Higher education equal university education. That is the myth of Sri Lankan society. Because the other 2 higher education avenues, there are 3 higher education avenues: university education, professional education, and the technical education. Because of the restricted technical education and the professional education, everyone wants to get a university degree. Then after getting a degree, they are trying to seek that. Of course, we know when the advanced level results coming, what is the announcement coming, is that 64% selected for universities in Sri Lanka, or qualified for universities in Sri Lanka. This itself is wrong. 64% qualified for higher education, not for university. But the statement itself is wrong. But publicly we announce 64% qualified for universities, not for professional education, not for technical education. So which means we have neglected professional and technical education, giving the equal status. So these 3 streams we have to equally treat it and we have to equally promote it. I think one stream should not go into other stream as well. Because university education means that is not just giving a degree, which the university is supposed to create knowledge. The knowledge creation, innovation, that research part we need to go with. So therefore, this is one lifelong education. I have many things to say, but my time, of course, is coming to very limited level. Now, shall we move into the next? And why I am speaking? Because of the professional numbers in Sri Lanka. This is AI production. The AI, what AI says in South Asia, how the quantity of professionals in, so that even medicine, we are not the number 1. The 1,000 people per medical doctor, we are Sri Lanka 1.1 to 19 ratio, but Maldives 2 to 16 ratio. And then you can compare other professionals also, where the green color shows the highest value. That is why I am saying the first and most important thing, I think OPA, it is a great place to explain this. Please understand the quantity of production of professionals not sufficient in Sri Lanka. And we should not think about the Sri Lankan market, we have to think about the global market. So the Singapore, even Philippines, producing people for global market. Many professional institutes reduce the number of professionals. They also going to produce degrees which should give by the universities, so they don't get extracurricular activities, they don't get cultural development, they don't get other type of training what university is giving. So therefore, what we need to understand, the number of professionals we have to increase in par with the at least South Asian countries. So that is one of the things I'm proposing. Because of the time, I think my time is over. You can go ahead with the other things. I think what I want to finally emphasize, the last slide. Can you go to last slide? Yeah, what we need is clear policy guideline. Clear policy guideline. Particularly, we need political parties which are integrity, consistent of their policies. Whether private education are we accepting or rejecting. That should be consistent, so that we know in the current world, without having private investment, we cannot go ahead. So that, of course, we need to have clear policy guidelines. If the policy is weak, then we can't do anything. Then all other things, data-driven decision-making. I think while I was the Vice Chancellor, I was trying to promote more and more data-based decision-making. That is how, when I accept the Vice Chancellorship, the University of Colombo was 1,410 in the global ranking. It came to 951. The University of Colombo was the only one university within 1,000 universities in the world in this year, by the last year. So that is why, because data-based decision-making is essential, because I mandatory ask all the professionals, all the academics to make their Google profiles and report their citations and research to the university. So this kind of very small change you can do, but that change will make a bigger outcome. I think the time has gone. You can use my slides, and if you have any question later, I'm delighted to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Karunaratne. Tibu තැනක සොර සතුරන් ගත නොහෙනා උගතමනා ශිල්පයමයි මතු රැකෙනා. No one can steal it away from you, no one can rob it. That's the power of education. It's a lifelong education, as you very correctly mentioned. And it has a tremendous potential for any nation to thrive, to resiliently revive. Education is absolute must. When you have people who are ignorant, the politicians can thrive. When you have intelligent people, they are answerable. So with that, let me move on to my friend whom I serve in the International Chamber of Commerce, the Policy Committee, my good friend, Dr. Nishan Dimel, to talk about public-private partnerships in order to unlock Sri Lanka's potential for economic growth. Shall you give him a big round of applause?
Thank you very much, Ajantha, and chair of this session. Also, I want to address the president of the OPA and the president-elect and the office bearers and all of you professionals who are gathered together today, and say thank you for being interested in this session and the way that the trouble you've taken to craft a topic for discussion that's important for the country. My session is about public-private partnerships. Now, you may want to say, why are we talking about it? Clearly, we are talking about it because there's this view that the government doesn't have fiscal space. It's in debt. It doesn't have the money to invest to grow the country. We all know that we want growth. And to get growth, you have to have investment. So economists even have things called investment output ratios, ICOs, where they say, well, if you invest 30% of GDP, you can increase nominal growth by about 7%, real growth maybe about 4%. So that the growth of an economy is considered to be linked directly to the level of investment that you do. And so you want to increase investment, but when the government itself and its revenue is constrained because it has to repay debt, because it doesn't have enough revenue for various reasons, then governments may look at public-private partnerships as a way to unlock that investment to grow the economy for everyone. What I'm going to say to you today is that, let me give an analogy before I unpack the slides and what I'm going to say, and to give you the big picture. You could think of investment as a form of nourishment. When a child is young and you want the child to grow, you think you should give the child better nourishment, and nourishment is like an investment. You make in the child and you get the right kind of nourishment in, the child is going to grow. However, so I want to say that nourishment is not the only thing that makes a child grow or succeed. The benefit of that nourishment comes from health overall. If the child is extremely ill or sick or having problems of digesting that food in a proper way, then the investment in food itself is not going to succeed for the child. Effectively, we know that in any growing situation for a child, you need not just nourishment, but good hygiene practices to make sure that the child is disease-free and is actually converting the nourishment into successful health outcomes and growth outcomes. When you think about a place that, when you think about Colombo 7 house and when you think about a slum dwelling, and we call it slums, we call them underserved communities, the main problem to solve, we know, for the children in the slum dwellings is not first nourishment or more food, it is hygiene. Otherwise, they'll lose that food in diarrhea, they'll lose it in worm-related problems, they'll lose it in illnesses. So if you don't have good hygiene, the nourishment doesn't really deliver for you. And I'm saying this only because I think with public-private partnerships, when we are trying to get investment, we must keep in mind that it's not only the investment that will make us succeed, it is also the hygiene or the good hygiene practices of governance, and I'm going to explain it simply, that's going to make public-private partnerships succeed. So it is not simply just saying, oh, let the private sector bring money and invest and somehow imagining that there's a magical solution, but that works if you got the governance hygiene in place. So that's going to be the overarching thing I'm going to say. I'm going to speak in 3 parts. I'm going to give you this large conceptual picture of what public-private partnerships are. Secondly, I'm going to talk about specific examples of public-private partnerships and show you success, failures, opportunities. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the 3 hygiene issues to solve and how we will solve them. Okay, so that's my approach. To start us off, the scope for public-private partnerships, typically when you're trying to build anything or do this investment, the state can come and provide everything and be the provider, the financier, the state can take the entire role. Or sometimes the state can step back and say, well, we don't provide things, but we facilitate it. We do the regulation that's necessary, right? And you see the state in combinations of these in the telephone sector, in telephones, the state was the provider in Sri Lanka Telecom. Later it said, look, we'll be less of a provider. Sri Lanka Telecom became effectively a public-private partnerships through privatization. And the state put a telecom regulatory commission and became the facilitator. But there are other ways in which the state, like Sri Lanka Telecom, may want to remain somewhat involved. So it is not just a facilitator or a regulator, but it's also in partnership with the private sector. Some mix of these things, or some mix of state provision versus private provision gets you public-private partnerships. Now, why do you want to do public-private partnerships? It's mainly because you think that beyond the private benefits of that venture, there are social benefits. There are greater economic benefits. Economists call them externalities. That this venture, supposing you created a venture that creates 1 million jobs. Now, the private entity is going to benefit from that enterprise and creating the jobs, but the country as a whole is going to benefit because there are 1 million more jobs, and these are all taxpayers, then they're going to pay revenue to government, so the entire society benefits. So when you see, and often public-private partnerships, the state is trying to encourage private investment in areas where it feels that it's unlocking very large economic and social value. And often this also happens in 2 ways. Sometimes, when the government doesn't have money, it just provides resources. Say it provides land. Sometimes there's a road that is connected to or connectivity. Other times, the government actually takes financial risk and it puts money in or agrees to take on all the loans that are paid. So again, even when a government is cash-strapped, there are different ways in which a government can enter public-private partnerships. Last of all, I want to say why the private sector and government benefit. One is that for the private sector, it creates access to funding and infrastructure. So it gets, with the large tracts of land or infrastructure that you need to run a big industry, then the government kind of agrees to provide it. But also it knows that when the government is involved, the government has an interest in making sure that the regulation and other laws are fair and equal, right? Government has Sri Lanka Telecom, so it tries to wants to keep a level playing field for telecom regulation and not act in unjust, unfair ways. For the government, it's the management, the innovation, the creativity that the private sector can bring in, and it's also the marketing and the higher returns that the private sector can generate. And of course, projects with high value. I'm going to go a little quickly because time's going fast. Now, I'm going to start with an opportunity, just so that we know that there are things we can do right away. So, and everything I'm saying has a paper that's published by Verité, so you can go and read it and look at it. So we have something called the Sri Lanka Policy Group, and we published a paper that said that there's a real opportunity for bringing in the private sector into export processing zones. So Sri Lanka keeps talking about building export processing zones, promoting exports. We keep talking about how little we export from this country compared to others. It's only about 10-15% of GDP. Other countries have brought this to 100%, 80%, and poorer countries also. But export processing zones can be a way of unlocking, but because we depend on state investment, our export processing zones have been very low. And just look at this slide. Globally, there are 3,500 export processing zones. 62% are privately owned. In Vietnam, they have 397, 89% privately owned. Bangladesh has 30% privately owned. Sri Lanka has 15, just one of them, that's 6%, that's privately owned. So you can see that, and the role of the state really becomes, a facilitator to engage by giving land, but also by passing the necessary laws. And I'll talk about this more later. But you can see that all these countries have passed, modern, special export processing zone regulatory laws, and Sri Lanka doesn't have that hygiene factor. So if you just simply say we are letting the private sector do it, you'll still have a problem, because without these hygiene factors, people will feel reluctant. They'll feel one zone may get treated differently to me, there's no level playing field for competition, so you may find it difficult to attract them also. One of the big success stories, this second part is about private-public partnerships. One of the big success stories for Sri Lanka was the South Asia Gateway Terminal that was built some time ago, and I'll show you the stats on that. In 1999, a 30-year build, operate, transfer model of private sector engagement. And the quality of that investment was so high that it is globally recognized and ranked as the most productive in South Asia, but not only that, as the 4th most productive terminal of its class in the world. And that one terminal has enabled Sri Lanka to massively improve itself as a hub for basically, transshipment, where things are brought to Sri Lanka, unpacked, reloaded, sent off to India, etc. So this transshipment growth and significant economic growth that has been enabled through the logistics system in Sri Lanka has come from this one public-private partnerships, and there are several others I can mention, but I'm giving you an example of why it's valued. Now, just like that, there are failures as well. So this is not a success story, called West Coast Power, the most expensive power station we have, from which we're forced to buy electricity, and all our electricity bills are higher because of it. This suffers from a particular problem highlighted by the economist Joe Stiglitz when he was in Sri Lanka in 2016 or so. He says, people often propose public-private partnerships, but they're not always as beneficial as they're advertised. Because usually in such partnerships, when there's no good hygiene, the government ends up taking most of the risk and the private sector takes most of the profit. And I'll show you what happened in West Coast Power, which is still an ongoing entity and still rife with corruption in what is done with related to that. The government took 82% of the financing risk, that all the loans that it was taken, and enormous foreign loans were taken, local loans were taken, almost everything, over about 55% of this venture, about 82% of this venture is borrowed money. Only about 18% comes from actual equity, and the government took the entire obligation of those borrowings as the financial risk to government. The ownership structure, so this changed this year as well, but this research was done earlier, was 50% to government with 82% of the financial risk. But when you look at dividend distribution, government got zero, okay? The dividend that was coming to government was used to repay the loans, and the balance was paid to a private entity hidden inside this structure, who with 5% share gets 24% or 25% of the dividend. It's a classic corrupt contracting system that caused enormous losses and risk to government and enormous private benefits to a private entity, but continues to this day. So let me end, my time is up, by 2 more slides telling you what the problems and the solutions are. Currently the hygiene problems for Sri Lanka in 3 parts, right? 1, we lack a national planning function for investment. We don't have a plan for what we want. And if you don't have, they say when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So what we do is often at the behest of the investor, not in the interests of the country. We lack the legal frameworks for making sure private-public partnerships are promoting the benefit of the economy and the society as a whole, rather than just private benefit, and we lack transparency. We manage to keep corrupt systems and bad contracts going by concealing data. We have something called Infrastructure Watch in Verité, and we found that the proactive disclosure laws in this country now mandate by law what you must reveal on infrastructure investments. Our government, even last year, reveals only 36% of what is legally required to be revealed in information. So the problems of vested interests are so high that not even the law is complied with. Only 36% of what's required to be revealed is revealed in the country. And that lack of transparency obviously allows the other hygiene factors to continue, right? So here are my 3 solutions, and I'll end with that. Have a public investment pipeline for public-private partnership selection. So yes, public-private partnerships can be a solution provided you have the right governance hygiene. And a public-private, public investment pipeline is like a marriage registry of those who are getting married. When people get married, they say, here's a marriage registry. You think, oh, what a strange thing to do. But that's because if you don't have a marriage registry, you get lots of useless gifts, things you don't want, things you don't like. And it's okay, I suppose, if it's a gift. But when it's a public-private partnership, you don't want useless projects and things the country doesn't want and people don't want. So you should create a marriage registry for yourself and tell the private sector, look, I'm willing to do these partnerships, but here's my priority order. For these kinds, if you have $100 million, here's what I want to do. If you have $50 million, here's what I want to do. If you have $1 billion, here's what I want to do. And those are highly evaluated, studied, the feasibilities are looked at, so that when the money comes in, and when you're doing what is actually you have decided is best for the country, not what somebody else wants, like often happens in wedding gifts. Secondly, improve contracting laws and frameworks. Economic, environmental feasibility studies. Today, we decide the project, contract the project, and do EIAs afterwards. What's the point? You can never reverse the project. So EIAs are fixed to say it's okay. Actually, when you decide your projects, the EIAs have to be done. That's the basis on which you think they're feasible. Involuntary resettlement. When you want to build a road, you have to have proper ways of treating people that you're displacing. Your procurement laws must be good and done well. And Sri Lanka is lagging behind all these things. And for years and years, for decades, in fact, we talk about improving our legal structures, but they are behind and they're being badly implemented and they're hurting us when we get into PPEs. Finally, shine a light so that everybody knows that what we're doing is right or wrong. Comply with proactive disclosure rules of the RTI Commission. So simply to say, putting this hygiene in place is the key method. Getting money, getting investors is not the problem. But in order to get them, there's no, we can't just magically say, come do whatever you want. We've got to put this pipeline in place and say, we've studied
Nishan,
our country.
I think I need to intervene.
Yeah, I'll stop in 30 seconds. Okay, we've studied our country. This is what our priority is. Let's invest in these, and they are studied. We have the legal frameworks to make sure that they are not subject to West Coast power like corrupt outcomes, okay? And we make sure the information is transparent so that it keeps the bureaucracy and the system honest. Thank you very much. And sorry for that.
PPP in action, planning, performing, and progressing. I think with that we concluded the 3 veteran presentations done by 3 different experts on 3 different areas which are really relevant and connected to unlocking the Sri Lankan potential. Now the forum is y'all to ask questions. I'm not wasting your time by summarizing, paraphrasing, or saying the same thing again and again. So we have a challenge. Mr. Ravinatha Aryasinha has to leave a bit early. So may I suggest the questions directed to him, shall we take them first and then leave the remaining questions for the other 2 panelists later? So the first question to Mr. Ravinatha Aryasinha, I hope the microphones are around for you to pick the microphone and raise your hand, and please refrain from making speeches and directly ask the question. We don't want Mike Tyson's here. Yes, there's a gentleman here. Yes. Please introduce yourself and ask the question.
I'm Dilhat Totewage from the Sri Lanka Economic Association. My question is, you said that Sri Lanka didn't bungle economic diplomacy and marketing, but my experience is during the wartime, the whole world was against us and the whole world was with the terrorists. And if you look at the Sri Lankan world situation now, I practically find that in Palestine's case, most of the people are with the Palestine. Even in the US and Australia, students are with the Palestine, public are with the Palestine. Only the government is with Israel. So that is about economic diplomacy. Marketing also, we have so much of untapped, in the private sector, we have so much of untapped exports and things like that, because in Sri Lanka, people don't want to now, they're sick of the country. They don't want to even live here.
So what
people
is the question? What is the question?
Question is, you said Sri Lanka didn't bungle marketing and economic diplomacy. I think that is heavily wrong. Sri Lanka has been bungling marketing and economic diplomacy, and even now we find that even the current government, even though they boast about having relations with India.
We had a point, you had a counterpoint. Let's listen to the point. Okay. No, we can answer this and move to the next question here.
I said was that we were being blamed. The whole problem was being blamed as a lack of economic diplomacy. So what I said, my argument was that it is not like we didn't try, but that the obstacles which came in our way in promoting economic diplomacy, and I was talking from my perspective as a diplomat, were the ones I listed. So that doesn't take away all that the state has done, industrialists have done. I was only trying to make the point that those days there were certain things when we went and asked an investor to come to Sri Lanka, we were told, how can I come? You know, this happens, that happens, the other thing happens. I can't, I have to invest a lot more than I actually invest. That's the point I'm making. I didn't use the word bubble. I said we are being blamed. that we didn't do that, but that the reason why we might have not fully succeeded was A, B, C, D. Now some of those are being rectified. The economic profile in terms of corruption is much better. We have shown how from this IMF engagement that we are capable of kind of, walking the talk. The tariff getting it to 20%, staying in par, shows a certain amount of leverage. But still, have we diversified our product basket? Have we diversified our markets? Have we got regulatory requirements tidied up? No. So that is the point I was making. I think you misunderstood the word I used. I didn't use that word. Yes.
It is I am who am saying that Sri Lanka has in the past bungled economic diplomacy and marketing. But whereas you said that you said you and your team have done your part correctly. I totally disagree. I think Sri Lankan government was how shall I say, faulty. It was a responsibility of the Sri Lankan.
Can I intervene?
Hard work alone is not enough. You need the brains and the correct things in place. I'm not denying that some people may have worked hard.
Sir, can I intervene? Can I intervene? You have all the rights to have your point of view. He has all the rights to have his point of view. Let's live with 2 points of view. Shall we move to the next question? Final question for him. Next question for him. We are a democratic society. We have multiple viewpoints. Next question for him. He has to leave. Please introduce yourself and ask the question very briefly.
Professor, my name is Rani Labewardhan and I am attached to Chartered Institute of Taxation. My question is to Mr. Ravinatha, that how can an ambassador be resourceful in terms of deriving or exploiting the economic benefits in a country? I'll quote you an example. China saw a potential in catapults, using catapults in Sri Lanka. And they made catapults and sent to Sri Lanka and they earned profits.
Okay, let me give you a classic example of how we were resourceful during COVID. And maybe some of those in industry might be familiar with this. When COVID struck, there was a demand for the kits, for the medical kits which were to be bought. Now, to produce those medical kits, we imported the raw material from China. The Chinese declared that product as an industrial good, as a security good. So we did not get supplies from China, and therefore, both together with the Finance Ministry and Trade Ministry in Colombo and our ambassadors, we had already got from people the orders saying, well, get it from these companies, we don't need to check them because we'll go with their reputation. But we had to produce them. And within about a month's time, we managed to source the material to prepare the kits, and that is what you saw the British Health Service, the Americans use. Actually, when the State Secretary came, he thanked us for providing them. But now the problem. 6 months after doing that, we had a problem. Why? At that time, we went on reputation because our apparel trade was very good and they got a pass. But in production terms, in 6 months, others had caught up and we could not keep the price to a saleable level. And that, I worry, is what I'm talking about, our absence of backward linkages and being able to source ourselves. I mean, even on apparel, even on the tax thing, be very careful. A secondary tax being imposed on us can take this whole thing out of the window. So that is what I'm saying. We have to be sustainable if we are to be competitive in the medium and long term. So this example is a good one. We can get right up there, but we have to maintain.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ravinatha. Aryasinha, shall we give him a big round of applause? Now the questions directed to Professor Karunaratne and to Dr. Nishan Dimel. We have very limited time, but we value your questions. Please.
Yeah.
Please introduce yourself and ask.
Yeah. I'm architect Dilumini Dimel, President Sri Lanka Institute of Architects. I would like to ask Mr. Dimel that regarding the private PPPs, how would you advise a new comer to the private partnership, private-public partnership? What are the success factors and what are the policies that you would advise to focus for a new project?
Okay, I think I need to interrupt the process. There's a small token of appreciation to be given to Mr. Ravinatha Aryasinha. I would hand over to the compeer.
Yeah, thank you very much. Would like to call upon the Media Pass President, Mr. Sarath Gamage, on stage, please, to present Mr. Ravinatha Aryasinha, former Foreign Secretary of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, with a special token of appreciation before he leaves. Would like to present this special token of appreciation. Can we also have the President joining? Shall you all put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you very much, Mr. Ravinatha Aryasinha, for your valuable contribution. Over to you, Session Chair. You have 5 minutes extra.
Thank you. Straight away to Dr. Nishan. Yes.
I'm happy to take one at a time or many together. So thank you. I thought I kind of laid out both an example and a framework, right? So there can
Dr.
be many
Nishan, sorry, I think you said your slides are available in the form of a paper.
All the things I've said are published in papers.
So if you can share a link with them, perhaps it will be useful.
We'll make sure we give. We're supposed to we'll put a QR code, or we'll send you all later links to the papers. Yeah. So, for instance, the export processing zones. So we've written a paper, so which I want to summarize all of it right now, that says here's how you get effective export processing zones going and unlock the possibility of private sector investment, rather than the government promising every year to build 10 zones, etc., for the last 20 years, and never getting around to do it, both lack of capability and lack of financing. So immediately you're unlocking industry, investment, and growth and exports, all the things that Sri Lanka needs, right? I think one of the things we argue is to get your laws and frameworks in place. That is, we don't have these, we don't say we are doing a deal with India or a deal with China. When we advertise, we take competitive bids that are based on a public investment pipeline that we have planned. The national planning function of Sri Lanka has deteriorated massively. So Sri Lanka must first have a sense of a plan. That means we've evaluated, we've studied, we've understood what works for the country. We did this, I personally was involved in the 1990s in the President's Advisor's Office, where we called the National Development Council, where we designed plans that finally got implemented after 2010. But then we've run out of those plans, right? And we need kind of well-considered planning for the country. And to get these working properly, like the EIA environmental laws, the resettlement laws, the procurement laws, all need modification in Sri Lanka. So what we are arguing is that the hygiene factors, if you don't fix the hygiene factors, you will keep getting into the Stiglitz problem. You will get private-public partnerships where the private sector is taking all the profit, the government and society is taking the risk and the cost. And this is not going to unlock growth for Sri Lanka, and West Coast Power was an example. Right. So in fact, it's negative to growth, right? It's driving up electricity prices in the country, preventing competition, etc. So I think that we've laid out the framework, we've published documents, and but as a government, what we need to do is not just assume that good behavior is going to solve the problem. There are some structural hygiene factors. So light is a great disinfectant. That's why you can start by just sharing information, the 60% of information that's not being shared with the country on infrastructure investments and projects should be shared immediately. And that'll help get the conversation and the thinking going to fix the laws, to fix the priorities. And I think that is what government, the responsibility of government and proper government requires. Yeah.
Interesting indeed. Do you want to clarify further? Yes.
Hello?
Yeah,
are you referring to only investments, public-private partnership? Or how about settlement of issues? So, for example, human settlements. Maybe conflict, to resolve conflict between human-animal conflict. So, especially related to elephants. So, in that case, I was told that by the certain experts that there are not enough research and infrastructure related to these issues in order to attend to these issues. So in such situation, not only investments, maybe to solve the issues that the current Sri Lankans are facing, but how do you advise that?
So typically when we use this particular term, PPP, public-private partnerships, we talk about partnerships in which the private sector is incentivized to come in on the basis of an investment that will have a return. Now, there are other ways the government gets together with the private sector for, we call, socially responsible activities. So the private sector may donate as charity, may do community service. Typically, we don't use the word private-public partnership on those kinds of things. We used to call them CSR, but today we call them ESG, environmental, social, and governance things. So all large private sector companies have some investment in the social good. And the government can certainly partner with companies in doing that, and they should. And the elephant conflict may be one of them that can get into either model. But yes, I think the term PPP is a specific term that's used to talk about unlocking finance, especially investment and management of the private sector to contribute to economic growth, and that's the context in which we're using it. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Nishan. Can we have a question for Professor Karunaratne? Yes, there's a question here. Please introduce yourself and ask.
I'm Lalit Vijayatunga, past president. Thank you very much for the informative presentation. It's a very good eye-opener for everybody. So I request OPA administration to share your slides to all professional institutions. My question is, you said the importance of enrolling the foreign students to the local universities. You were in the administration last few years. What are the steps that you have been taken to enroll foreign students to the local universities? That is number one. Number two, you said about the GDP, the university contribution to the GDP. So some says the universities are there to educate the students, not to produce employable graduates. Some says no, universities should be introduced to the GDP and employable students. What are your thoughts? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for very interesting and important question. Number one, the issue with respect to the foreign students. When I became the Vice Chancellor in 2022, there were only 65 foreign students. When I complete my session, there were 406 foreign students in the University of Colombo. So the basic issue with respect to the foreign students, that signing MOU is a big issue, where we need to get the Foreign Ministry approval, Defense Ministry approval, those who are coming to learn. So to overcome what I did that, we signed agreement with university to university in China, and then the universities, we actually I got the endorsement from the Dr. Palitha Kohana. He was at that time the ambassador to China. So accordingly, we started bringing the Chinese students. Then, of course, other universities also started with following the same agreement. So what we need is we need to think about any foreign student if we want to take. If we are thinking about defense, if we are thinking about the foreign relations, we can't do that. So the defense and foreign ministries should do it in professional manner, individual case basis. But if you stop signing MOU for universities, don't sign MOU without our approval, not only universities, even professional bodies can have the foreign people. The basic issue that our policy is very important, as I mentioned that the government should have an integrated policy, that the time to time it should not be changed. 1 year they announced that you have to get the defense ministry approval, then the foreign ministry approval, then the UGC approval. So we need to have a clear policy with
Policy
respect
consistency.
to consistency, and of course that you can see why the foreign students we can't attract is simply that we need to do it in innovative way because of these government issues. It's not current government, any government, but maybe because of the war we had for a long period, so that war mentality and the many institutions, they thought that the foreign students is threat to the country. But Singapore, they never concerned. Japan, they never concerned. Individual case by case, they have problem that should be professionally addressed by the defense and the foreign ministry, but it is not the mass scale. So that is the number one answer, I think, for your question. The second question, of course, what we can do, it's of course the perception of the people. Someone can argue that university should produce technical graduates or professionals or skills. That's also wrong. The universities are for what? That is, number one, teaching and learning. Number two, research, innovation, product development, and do the industry collaboration. So that, of course, the entrepreneurship should promote through the universities. And of course, not only that, going beyond that, the universities are providing citizens better training in terms of languages, sports, cultural activities. All these should be a package in university. It is not only skill development. So therefore, I think people have different perceptions, but there is a standard definition for who should be the university student, what should be the training for university student. Okay, thank you very much for your question.
I know there are a lot of questions in the audience, and I got 2 questions as a chit, even though I don't like the chits. So the good news is that they are available for you to interact during the tea break, and they will be more than willing to answer all your questions during the tea break. Time is up. I don't want to prolong so that the next panel will suffer. So it was a delight indeed to be here, and thank you OPA for inviting me and all of us. I hope we all can get together in making Sri Lanka a better country. And then I had always been saying we didn't have economic crisis, we didn't have social crisis, we had a leadership crisis. So when the right leadership is in place, everything will fall in line. So with that positive thought, may I hand over to the compeer, and I think the panel, including Ms. Ravinatha, Aryasinha, need another big round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can we have once again on stage President Mr. Sujivalal Dahanayaka, President-elect Mr. Ajantha Gallaheva, General Secretary Mr. Tissara De Silva, and Mr. Sarath Gamage, Immediate Past President, presenting the tokens. The first token of appreciation we already presented earlier. And now it's time to present Senior Professor H.D.Karunaratne with his token of appreciation. Thank you very much, Senior Professor H.D.Karunaratne. Shall we all put our hands together one more time, everyone? Come on. And the next token of appreciation being presented to Dr. Nishan Dimel. Thank you very much, Dr. Nishan Dimel. And then, ladies and gentlemen, a token of appreciation to our versatile session chair, Professor Ajantha Dharmasiri. Thank you very much, Professor Ajantha Dharmasiri. Can we have the other panelists as well joining the dignitaries for a group photograph? With or without your tokens, don't worry. Thank you very much. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up the session 1. Because we had an extended session 1, we thought of dropping the morning refreshments. Don't worry. You have 15 minutes to enjoy the refreshments and be back sharp at 10:45. Thank you.
The Sea Line Group, established in 1985, has emerged as the Sri Lankan gateway for global maritime and logistics services through its 25 subsidiaries. The Maritime Division includes the largest crew recruitment and management company in Sri Lanka, a shipping agency catering to all types of vessels, including passenger and foreign naval ships calling at all Sri Lankan ports, the leading ship engineering company, and a leading maritime supply and services company with ISO certification, making it a one-stop shop for major ship owners and managers worldwide. The Logistics Division includes a leading freight forwarding arm, a leading transport company with its own fleet of prime movers, exclusive agents for many shipping lines and ocean carriers, a leading cold chain management company, and the #1 laden container yard in Sri Lanka, with modern and efficient container depot services, advanced container handling equipment, and a real-time electronic data interchange system. The Maritime and Logistics Division has the capacity to provide customized total solutions for manufacturing, import, and export giants of the country, enabling the Sea Line Group to be an exclusive shipping and logistics service partner. Sea Line Travels is an IATA certified ticketing and travel agent. Sea Line Travels provides end-to-end travel requirements for seafarers, corporate clients, and fits both in the inbound and outbound space. SINEC, established in 1990, is one of Sri Lanka's largest non-state higher education institutes. CMed Healthcare Services Private Limited is a leading diagnostic service provider in Sri Lanka, with 10 laboratories and over 650 service centers island-wide.
Institute of Supply and Materials Management, ISMM, a pioneering institution established in 1972 and formally incorporated under an Act of Parliament in 1981 as the national professional body for supply chain management. Since its inception, ISMM has trained over 20,000 professionals, many of whom have gone on to become industry leaders and key decision makers across Sri Lanka and globally. In recognition of ISMM's significant national contribution, the government of Sri Lanka officially declared October 24th, the Institute's founding day, as National Supply Chain Day. ISMM also plays a leading role promoting excellence within the supply chain industry. Since 2022, it has proudly launched the National Supply Chain Excellence Awards in collaboration with the Ministry of Industries. These prestigious awards highlight best practices and innovation across organizations of all scales, and while also recognizing outstanding achievement of individual professionals. ISMM's credibility is reinforced by its affiliations with prestigious regional and global bodies. ISMM has also established formal partnerships with some of Sri Lanka's leading corporate organizations in the field of supply chain and logistics. With a legacy spanning over 53 years, ISMM continues to evolve in response to the dynamic needs of industries. It stands as a beacon of excellence, steadfast in its commitment to advancing education and professional practice in supply chain and logistics, both nationally and internationally. Institute of Supply and Materials Management. Partner with the pioneer in supply chain education.
In a world where every element is a canvas waiting to be shaped, work hard to Powertech Cement, where the journey to create excellence begins. At Powertech Cement, we believe in the strength found in the union of Earth's elements. Our commitment to excellence. In a world where every element is a canvas waiting to be shaped, work hard to Powertech Cement, where the journey to create excellence begins. At Powertech Cement, we believe in the strength found in the union of Earth's elements. Our commitment to excellence starts right here in Jayala, Sri Lanka. Every morning at Powertech begins with the dedication of our team. The Powertech team, the backbone of our strength, awakens before the sun rises, handpicking the finest raw materials, the foundation of Powertech Cement's quality. Our craftsmanship and creativity come to life as our skilled Powertech team twist and rolls, maximizing the twist and bringing out the natural essence from within the cement. Innovation meets tradition at every step. But our commitment goes beyond production. We strive to preserve the environment. Our sustainable practices ensure that every bag of Powertech cement carries not just strength, but a promise to protect our earth. Our Powertech team, the unsung heroes of every construction project, are the embodiment of dedication and strength. Through their hard work and commitment, Powertech Cement is forged into a symbol of reliability and durability. From raw material to finished product, we bring all these elements together. Our modern technology ensures the highest quality, separating every element to create Powertech Cement's exceptional recipes. Powertech Cement, where every bag is a commitment to excellence, every pour is a creation, and every structure stands as a testament to a bond that lasts forever. The strength of Powertech Cement is not just a claim, it's a reality seen in every project it touches. At Powertech Cement, we value our customers, their needs, and provide the best solution. We are the choice of constructors, engineers, architects, and the vast community. Your trust fuels our commitment to excellence. To unite the elements of Earth, we have crafted a cement that reflects the land it came from and the heart and feelings of every person involved in the process of creating it. A product that transcends us and you. Would you share it with us as we share it with the world? Portex Cement, bond forever.